Welcome to At the Ready podcast, where we gear up men to navigate life's battles with purpose. Join us as we arm ourselves with wisdom, faith, and a community of men prepared to walk this life together. Now let's get ready. On this episode of At the Ready, I sit down with Stephen Hatchell. Stephen is a assistant football coach for Mayfield High School. He's a man of God. He's somebody who had some success in his life playing the game of football, was a quarterback. And in this episode, we kind of talk about how he wrestled with those two things, how he was a follower of Jesus and that popular person, that quarterback, played at the collegiate level and now passes on or continues his gift through coaching and through raising up, trying to raise up good young men. And we break all that down in our conversation today. Stephen's a great guy. I look forward to getting to know him more, growing our friendship, and possibly having him on for a future episode also, because we didn't even cover a lot of the things that we could have got into as we get to talk about toward the end. He started to bring up more and more subjects as we were already running into the 2.5 hour mark. So definitely a guest that I'll have back on again in the future. So great conversation. Look forward to sharing it all with you guys. So sit down and listen up as I talk to Stephen. Now let's get ready. All right, Stephen Hatchell. Welcome to At the Ready podcast.
I'm glad to be here.
Man, I'm excited for this. If you're watching and not listening, you can already tell that our attire is completely opposite. You are the first person that I have ever on the podcast suggested what they wear, and I did it on purpose.
Yeah, the text message, I was like, what? He's overly concerned. Why is he concerned about what I'm going to wear? Because I hadn't watched one, but I'd seen some pictures, and guys were just pretty casual.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why is he? I wonder why he's trying to discuss what I'm going to wear.
Yeah.
Now that I know, I get it. Okay.
I had in my mind I was going to do this whole thing. I was going to wear a shirt over this, and then after we started, I was going to be like, man, I'm hot. Let me pull this shirt off. But that seemed too theatrical, so I just busted it out on you. I bleed blue, and you're a traitor and turned to red.
That's what I've been told. It's pretty amicable, but I get on. I used to get on Joe all the time because Joe's first year as the head coach at Mayfield was my junior year in high school, and we beat them. We beat Mayfield that year, and then so since I've been at Mayfield, started in 2007, we haven't lost a whole lot of ball games in total, so we haven't lost a whole lot to. We call them the school up north.
Yeah, the school up north.
Yeah, the school up north. But it's the great thing about it is it's a rivalry, and it's really great for our community. You go football, and we even get into basketball, but we have great relationships with a lot of the people at Graves, and I think they feel the same about us. I love when Tyler got that job. I was so excited for him because I think he works with us with our school system in the Gateway Academy, which is what he does, and he has been phenomenal to work with, and he's a great dude.
Yeah, I'm having Tyler on too.
Yeah, so he's a great dude.
I'm excited for it.
I'm so excited for him, and I know he's going to do a lot of good things.
Yeah, which I'll probably release your episode after Joe's, so people already have heard Joe's. But when I started to think about the dynamic of coaching and interviewing some people, I was like, how cool would it be to get Joe Morris, who is, for all intents and purposes, the GOAT in this area of coaching.
Right.
Coaches Hall of Fame, 7 state titles, 25 years as a head coach in one school. That's almost unheard of. to have him and then follow that up with now you've got brand new first year head coach at a high school,
right?
5A high school, and so I think that'd be cool just to see how they relate and everything.
Yeah.
So let me give you a little intro for those that don't know you. Stephen Hatchell. So you're a little bit older than me. We went to high school together, but when I was a freshman, you were a senior. You played quarterback for Graves County High School. Did you start all 4 years?
We moved. My dad got the head coaching job after my freshman year, so we moved that summer.
Okay.
I was a sophomore, and my older brother was a junior. So he started 2 years. I started 3.
Okay. So started 3 years of your high school career there. You played 2 years for Murray State University.
3 years.
3 years for Murray State University. Then you went and played 2 years at Campbellsville University. All right. Then you coached at Mayfield High School. I got from 2007 to 2014. Moved to Myrtle Beach. I'm a little bit jealous of you there. And you coached 2 years at Georgetown High School, football and golf.
Yep, football for a year, and then golf for 2 years.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. And then moved back here to your hometown. Well, not your hometown, but your wife's hometown. And currently you're the assistant principal for Mayfield High School.
That's right.
And assistant coach.
That's
the
right.
offensive coordinator.
Offensive coordinator.
The man, your husband, father of 2, 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. Did I get
That's
everything?
right. Yep.
That's a nutshell. All right, that's a wrap. Let's go.
That pretty much wraps up my whole life there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's crazy how you can wrap your whole life up into about 3 or 4 sentences.
Yeah.
You know?
I think a lot of people, they look at their life and they think, man, I've done a lot of cool things. And then you can wrap it up in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, maybe I
well,
didn't do too many things. Yeah.
Not as cool as I thought it was, I guess.
No, that's cool. So, what I like to do on this show is just give you opportunity to give us some more detail.
Sure.
I gave you an overview, but give some more detail. You can start wherever you want, but I definitely want to hit on. I already heard you say you played underneath your dad. I kind of want to talk a little bit about that and stuff. But wherever you want to kick off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I mean, the way I describe my life growing up is we moved around. I think I counted it up. We lived in 13 or 14 different houses when I was growing up.
Oh wow!
But we never left the state of Kentucky. Dad was he always wanted to coach football, and then he got to be a head coach, and he had this philosophy that he never wanted to go to a school where football was really good. He wanted to go somewhere where he felt like he could invest his time in building something up. Maybe they were good at one point, and then they fell on some hard times.
Yeah.
And if he could go in there and kind of turn things around a little bit, that was kind of his idea. And then once he felt like he had accomplished that, and it never for him was it about I want to win a state championship.
Yeah.
It was about leaving a program better than he found it, and I think that was kind of why we moved around so much, because once he felt like he had done everything he could do in that particular place, we would move somewhere else, and that's kind of how we ended up at Graves County. I think the year before we got there. I don't know I can't remember how many games. It wasn't many. It was 0 or 1 or maybe even 2, but it wasn't a whole lot. And coach stepped down and the job was open. And Dad was like, do you guys want to go down there? And for whatever reason, we were all in total agreement. I mean, I know it was a God thing now, but at that point, I had zero relationship with God. I wasn't saved.
Where were you moving from?
Anderson County, so Lawrenceburg, Kentucky.
Okay, I know where Lawrenceburg is.
It's right between Lexington and Frankfort.
Yeah.
Right there in the central part of the state.
Okay.
Which is where I spent most of. That's kind of where I developed into playing a lot of different sports. We played football, we played basketball, we played baseball. We were running around town, just playing sports, and that's kind of where that developed for me. And then after my freshman year, we moved down here, and the first guy that I got to know as a friend, he became my best friend, was Clint Reed, and he would take me to Trace Creek. I would stay weekends with him most of the time. He would take me to Trace Creek, and I'd go to church there, and then there was a revival, And in September of that year, which was September '98, Brady Weldon was preaching, and I knew that God was calling me to Him.
Yeah.
So in September '98, God saved me, and I accepted Jesus, and that's when that journey begins. And it's not a straight uphill kind of easy path.
Wait a minute. You mean it wasn't just straight line
Sanctification?
sanctification?
It was not.
Pretty
It was
as all
not.
get
It
up?
is. It is still an ongoing process, and God has put obviously my wife, who she had these amazing expectations about what her husband was going to be and how he was going to behave and act, and I've let her down on more than one occasion.
Your wife may be an angel on earth.
100%.
Yeah, I don't
100%.
say that hitting on her, but I went to school with your wife.
Yeah.
You know, me and her are the same age. You're a
Right.
little bit older than me, and I can always just remember her just being perfect in everything she did.
That's what I thought too. The first time we met, and actually started, getting to know each other, I was like, "There's not a better human being on this planet."
Is there anything wrong with you?
Yeah, that was the question that I always ask myself.
It's funny how intertwined our stories are, but yet we didn't really know each other that well.
Right.
Because one of my really good friends growing up was Clint's younger brother, Alex.
Love Alex. Alex was awesome.
And I went to Alex's wedding. Like in our high school years, me and Alex were pretty close. You know, really good friends. So it's just weird how we know a lot of the same people and same.
And the cool part about Alex is when I would be and Clint and I would spend a lot of time together in high school. And Alex was like it wasn't abnormal for him to hang out with us.
Mm-hmm.
He was just that kind of. He was the cool little brother that you didn't mind spending time with. As
and he wasn't
Clint,
he wasn't that little though.
No, and he was not that little. Neither one of them were. They were. I spent a lot of time with Alex while I was in high school too. But went to Murray State I was fortunate enough to get a football scholarship to play there. I was on the I get this one claim to fame. I wasn't the starter. I was the backup, but I was on the last team to win the OVC championship.
Hey, all right.
And that's going to be set for life because they've now moved on to the Missouri Valley. I was on the last team to win the OVC.
All right, before we get there, you're going a little too fast.
Yeah.
Let's camp it in high school for
Okay.
just a second. One thing I want to cover is being starting quarterback,
Right.
being a follower of Jesus,
Right.
and playing for your dad. What did those three dynamics look like? Because
right. So, and I was still obviously as my sophomore year, being a young Christian, I didn't understand like everything that I was supposed to be doing. Was there still some language there? Absolutely. Yeah. Was I still doing things that I shouldn't have been doing? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of as I began going to church and learning, you begin to see, okay, these are some avenues in my life that I need to, God needs to work through me to make some changes.
Yeah.
That process started, and then I got better at handling situations on the field in terms of how I not necessarily play, but how I interacted with teammates and guys that I was playing against.
Okay.
And I can remember playing against Madisonville my senior year. They had some guys that were really good players, but they did some things in piles that you shouldn't be doing.
A little bit dirty play.
Obviously, like we all had a little bit of that, but I remember one of them saying something to me. I don't remember what he said, but I said, "Man, you know what? I love you, and Jesus does too." I do remember saying that
in the pile.
In the pile.
Nice.
I think he tried to scratch my eyes or something. Got underneath my face mask, and I was like, "Man, hey, you know what? I love you, and Jesus does too." So, that's one thing that I remember. And I was like, and it wasn't me doing that. It was just how God was working and developing and kind of changing and molding and shaping.
Yeah.
That was a spontaneous, hey, it comes out. That kind of thing. Playing for my dad was difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I wouldn't change it, but it was very difficult.
Yeah.
Because my dad and I are very similar. We're both perfectionists. We're both very hard-headed and stubborn. So we butted heads a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that was the toughest part is there wasn't a lot of relationship outside of football and practice.
Yeah.
And that was more me than him, because being a 17, 18-year-old kid, I wanted to get away from him outside of that. And I was a mama's boy.
Yeah.
There's no question. I could lean on my mother, and talk to her. I had no issue with that. And I think that was just the dynamic that we had.
Yeah.
It got instantly better. My dad and I's relationship got instantly better after I graduated.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't. I didn't have to worry about, is he going to come home and talk about practice, or is he going to? Are we going to have this constant conversation about football? He was no longer my coach; he was just my dad. So the relationship improved dramatically once. And it wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it was hard for me to navigate being with him at practice and then being with him at home, and trying to divide and separate those two.
Yeah, so hard for you to differentiate between coach and father.
Right.
And I bring that up because, I just interviewed Joe Morris, and his son was a freshman, fixing to be a sophomore, and I was like, man, why retire now? Did you not want to finish and coach your son? And
Right.
He said, really, I'm looking forward to just being a dad and being able to just sit in the stands and watch my son play ball. Because I feel like it'd be hard. I help coach my kids when they're young. I don't know a ton about sports. I didn't play any in school. I didn't become the specimen I am now until I became an adult. So I was the wimpy kid, weak wimpy kid. But it's hard to separate the two, of coach and dad. And so when my kids get to kind of middle school era, then I just kind of step back. Mm-hmm. Now, in the weight room, I can help them all day long.
Right.
I can do those kind of things. But as far as the sport itself goes,
right.
I just let the coaches do the coaching, and I just try and encourage. And now I do get on to my kids for effort.
Right.
Like I tell them all the time, hey, if you're going to do this, you're going to give me effort. And
right.
We're going to give 100%, but as far as the coaching goes, I step to the side. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring up about you and your dad's dynamic.
Yeah.
There are a lot of kids whose dad coached them in elementary, but you had it, I'm assuming, all the way up through.
Yeah, I mean, I remember growing up, of course, him being the head football coach and having different roles within the school system. We always had access to the batting cages for baseball and the weight room, and if we had somewhere indoors inside the football locker rooms, if we had space in there, we could get in there and do stuff if it was raining outside, or we had access to the fields, or in the gym. So like during the summer, where some kid, and we went to we did the pool thing, and we spent the night with friends and did all that, but a lot of my summer memories, I remember we'd get up and we'd go with him to school, and we'd shoot ball in the gym, or we'd go to the weight room and lift. And this is going all the way back to 5th, 6th, 7th grade.
Right.
Those memories are very evident and very clear to me as to the things we did that a lot of kids don't get to experience because their dad's occupations are different, or their moms are doing different things.
Right.
So they don't get to do those types of things. I mean, he would just, we were bored sitting at home, he would, all right, let's go. We're going to go hit baseballs in the batting cage. And we'd go to the school and we'd get in the batting cage and we'd hit or we'd throw or we'd, those kind of things. That was a constant for us. And it was good. I don't think, I think about graduating college and not having any student loan debt. Part of the reason for that is because when we didn't want to, he was kind of pushing, we need to do this. And I think that even translates into my life now. When I get up in the morning and I really don't want to work out, I think about, okay, I need to. And then the reason is because I want to be able to do things with my kids.
Right.
When, like now, yeah, they're 3 and 8, but if my son decides, he wants to be involved in sports when he's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, I want to be able to physically do these kinds of things with him.
Yeah.
And not just say, well, you're going to have to you're going to have to go with a buddy or do whatever.
Yeah.
I want to be able to do it. And I have access to be able to do that. So physically, I want to be able to help him as well.
Yeah. You want to be able to do that journey with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. My oldest son, he's 15, going to be 16. So, like I said, I'm not involved with the sports, but the weight room's kind of my thing.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times I'll tell him when we're at the local gym, I'll kind of look around first and make sure. But I'll always ask my son, be like, what's it feel like working out with the strongest guy in the gym right now? And he'll be like, shut up, Dad,
Yeah.
And then I'll always pick on him. You'll never be able to outlift me, which I hope one day he does. But
Yeah. And,
many years from now.
Yeah. And I think about my daughter, she got to play organized basketball for the first time this winter. She got on a little team, and we played some weekend stuff, and she really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there thinking, she will ask from time to time to go out and shoot ball. We got a little basketball goal out front, but there's going to come a time when, hey, you're going to come with me to school. You're going to want to shoot ball. Well, we've got access to that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I wasn't the best basketball player in high school. I played really hard. Some people say I played dirty. Well, if I could get away with it, I did, because I was a 6'2" post player. So I was playing against guys like Wes Johnson, who was 6'6", and in practice, I was trying to give him my best, and my best was to be as physically imposing on him as possible, so that when he got into a game, he could do better.
Yeah.
That was kind of my thing with him, but. Same thing with my daughter. I want to be able to, okay, this is the technique you should use, and this is the kind of skills you should be able to practice, so that when it comes time for you to play, if that's something you really want to do, you have the. You may not be the most athletic person on the floor, but you've got some of those skills, and your effort is there, so you'll be able to contribute and help.
One of the things I remember about your dad, because he did teach at the high school I went to, I'd never had him for any sports, but I took the upper limits class, and he was the teacher of that. Your dad was always like a no-nonsense, pretty serious kind of guy, like very dry, and you didn't do a whole lot of cutting up in the weight room. We're there to do a job. Let's get the job done.
That was it was very much no nonsense. We're going to go in there, we're going to work, we're going to get it done, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And that was a good thing in a sense, because you kind of knew what the expectations were. Like it wasn't well, one day it's going to be this and the next day it's going to be that. And that was the good thing was, and learning from him, we're going to set these expectations and this is the way it's going to be. And there's no gray area. There's no on-off switch. You're going to come in, and we're going to do this every day.
Yeah.
So,
does he still go to the Y every day?
I don't know if he goes every day. I think he goes maybe 3 times a week, 4 times a week. It just kind of depends.
Yeah.
Kind of depends on what he's got going on. He loves to play golf, so when he's able to go out to the course and play, he goes and plays.
Yeah. I see him mowing his yard a lot.
Loves to. He wants his yard to be nice.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, he probably he's got to mow 2 or 3 times a week. Like it looks like golf course
Yeah,
grass.
yeah, that's what he's got. He seeded Bermuda, I don't know, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And he cuts it short. So and he will mow it. He'll mow it 3 times a week just to make sure it maintains and thickens up. And
I mean, but hey, when you're retired, what else you got to do? You know?
That's
cool. All right, so sorry, I just felt like that was a good spot to stop and discuss that because there may be some young men going through that kind of thing. Like, hey, how do I balance being a Christian and being popular, or being a Christian and playing a sport, or you know, I think that's important because my son, like I said, I didn't play any sports, so I didn't really have this problem. But my son, he's a follower of Jesus, and he's an athlete. Yeah. So I'm all the time preaching to him, not about the sports, but about being the example.
Right, and that's the hardest part about doing that is the persona that's out there of what you should be because you're an athlete, because you're good, because you're are you the best on the team or one of the best on the team. That brings with it some popularity. And then there's the world's expectations of what you should be.
Right.
And I think we get into a lot of times, high school kids especially, they're trying to figure out who they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what they're, what they like, what they don't like, what they want to be involved in,
what friends they want to
hang around with. And so a lot of times they look at professional athletes and they say, well, this guy's doing this. But the reality is they see 1% maybe of a professional athlete's life. And they think because they walk out of the locker room and they're wearing a certain thing, or, they're listening to a certain type of music with a certain type of headphones on, that, well, I'm one of the better players on the team, so I need to be doing that. When in reality is you're seeing a microscopic view of who that athlete really is.
Yeah.
And so you don't know the whole reality behind who they are, or what they believe, or where their what their belief system is, or do they have faith, do they not have faith?
Yeah.
And so they get a messed up view of what they should be. And I tell kids a lot of times, like, don't be who you were meant to be. If you're trying to do this because that person does it, then you're being them.
You're trying to be them.
You're not being you.
Yeah.
And the reality is you're being fake.
Yeah.
And God didn't make you to be. He certainly didn't make me to be Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
It would be nice.
Yeah.
I'm sure. But He made me to be me. So I can't go out and try to be somebody else, because then I'm not being real to myself. I'm not being real to them. So that kind of hurts the relationship. If I've got a relationship with that person at all, but I'm not being who I was meant to be, who God called me to be, then there is no real relationship.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that person's got a problem or an issue, or they're struggling with a situation, or they're struggling with their mental health, I can't help them because I wasn't real with them in the first place.
Right.
So there's no relationship there.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Even as simple as you brought up too, being on the field, sometimes there's some language or whatever. Some of my friends, not my friends, some of my son's friends, because he's got a smartphone, but we try and monitor the best we can, at this point, he almost has to have one because of all the practices and everything he goes to. So it's not that I want to expose him to those things. It's almost a necessity. So, I see some of the conversations they have, and we've instilled the values, and my son does a pretty good job, but I do see him cave to temptation when we start to talk about, like, how you present yourself and who are you really as a person. I'm all the time like, do you see how they're talking? Like, what good comes of that? I said, to me, when I look at somebody and their their message that they sent you, every other word's a cuss word. To me, I don't see cool or bad necessarily. I see ignorance. I'm like, you couldn't come up with some better words,
Right.
better descriptive words
Right.
than those. It makes you look not smart.
Yeah.
And I remember when I told my son that, I could see the wheels turning like, oh, okay. You know, sometimes I use some strong language toward my son when I'm really trying to get my point across, but but because that's not in my everyday vocabulary, when he hears it, he knows, oh, Dad means business.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
he slipped a word that he doesn't normally say,
Right.
you know. And so it's just hard trying to instill those things when they're an athlete.
Right.
And like you said, the world expects a popular athlete to be a certain way, but we're trying to live set apart instead.
And I've told my kids in the weight room before. We had some kids in there one day, and I was working out, and they spent like they do one set of bench for 30 seconds, and then spend the next 3 or 4 minutes just jabbering back and forth and talking, and picking at each other, making fun, and of course, the language.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, wait a minute. And I pulled them all in. I sat them down. I said, listen to me. I said, you guys waste so much time running your mouths back and forth to each other. And here's the deal. The language that you're using, I said, it almost makes you guys sound unintelligent because of that language. You know, if you would actually cut out the cursing and think about what you're going to say instead of just mouthing back and forth, you would have less to say because you start thinking about what you're saying and you're like, I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
Then you have more time to do the workout. You guys are wasting so much time. And I said, let's start to be intelligent about our conversations. And I told him, I said, is there going to be a time when something's going to come out of my mouth that shouldn't? I said, absolutely. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not perfect. I said, but I promise you this, when it does, I will apologize to you and I'm going to make it right. Because I don't want to be seen as the person who uses that language just nonstop. But at the same time, it's like you guys you're wasting so much time using that type of language, and again, you're being somebody who they want you to be. You're not being
yourself.
Yeah,
and a lot of it's too about who are you representing?
Right.
So us as followers of Jesus, that's who we're representing. You know, regardless of the grace, when we go out in public as Christians,
Right.
Followers of Jesus, people look at us differently. And are we representing him well?
Right.
Obviously I know I have the grace, and he's going to forgive if I
Right.
slip up. But at the same time, I'm proud, and I want to represent him well.
Absolutely.
And so you could even apply that to school. Hey, are you guys proud of this Cardinal?
Right.
Are you proud of your school? Are you proud of the program that we've built? To which I'm sure most of them will say, yeah. Then let's represent it well.
Right.
I would. We just had a really cool ceremony for Father's Day here at our church, and this was something that my pastor's dad had passed on to him. And it was a plaque, and I'm not going to remember the poem, but essentially the plaque, you put your family's name on it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I put Copeland. You would put your last name on it, and it talks about passing down the name,
Right.
and trying to pass it down without blemish, and representing that well.
Right.
And I thought that was so cool. We all the men filled one out with our names on it, and you pass that down to your son,
Yeah.
father, son, because that's who we pass our
Right.
names down to. So I thought that was cool. You could even go as far as when you're talking to your son one of these days, I've given you my name. You have my name. Represent it well.
Right.
Thought that was cool. All right, so now you're into college. What did that look like? You said Murray State?
So got to Murray State, and of course I'm super excited. It's now it was called 1AA. Now it's FCS Division I, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
They're making money, name, image, and likeness. I always poke fun. Like we were on, I think it was college football 2005. Murray State was on it. We all were on there, and I'm like, I got no money from that. What happened there?
Yeah.
Like I should have gotten at least like $20. Come on, you can
something.
at least EA Sports hand me $20.
Yeah. What did you get? How much screen time did you get?
On the game?
Yeah.
I was still the backup quarterback.
So maybe if they pan the sidelines, you were on there.
So but they it was just funny to talk about. But that was I enjoyed being with the guys on the team. Like they were awesome people. Stuart Childress was the starting quarterback at the time. He was his faith. I mean, he was a rock.
Yeah.
And he kind of took me under his wing and helped me out. And I learned a lot from him. He was so mature beyond his years in terms of his faith and just how he carried himself.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of the guys, there were a couple coaches who I got along with really well, but and a lot of the guys didn't see it, but there were several, including myself, that endured a lot of emotional abuse. And people think, well, what are you talking about? Like coaches yelling, cussing. I said it went beyond that. I mean, it became degrading to the point where we felt like, the verbal abuse and the emotional, we felt like we weren't worthy to be a part of the team or the program. And I got to the point where I hated football. And I'm sitting there thinking, I have loved this game since I can remember.
Yeah.
I would spend every waking moment watching college football, watching the NFL. We'd spend hours upon hours just honing our craft and getting better because I was just passionate about it. And I'm sitting here in my third year at Murray State, and I absolutely hate football. And I was to the point where if I don't touch a football ever again, I would be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And it was just because of the way, and it wasn't all the coaches. A lot of them were great. But it was just kind of the way they made you feel about yourself. And that was the point where I made the decision, like, I'm either going to quit playing and be done and never associate myself with it again, or I'm going to take a chance and see if there's somewhere else where I can play and see if I can find that childlike love that I had for it in the past.
Yeah.
And that
had you played any games up to
Yeah,
this
so
point?
I started my third year. So I was redshirted my first year. Was the backup my second year. That was the year we won the OVC. The third year, Stuart was his last year. He got hurt. I can't remember if it was game 1 or game 2, but I ended up starting the rest of the season.
Okay.
So I started 8 or 9, 10 games. I can't remember what it was. But this is the crazy thing. You're sitting there. You're the starting quarterback at an FCS program. You've been on the field with Kentucky. You've been on the field with Memphis. My first college football game was at Ole Miss, which was Eli Manning's first career start, by the way.
That's cool.
I think he did pretty well for himself.
Yeah.
But it was just cool to be there and experience that. And you watch the progression. I was on the field with Tony Romo when he was in college, and you watch these guys progress through the NFL, and you're like, okay, I was somewhat connected.
Yeah, I played with him.
So that was really cool. But, and I dreaded Saturdays. Like I dreaded getting up, going to the facility, getting myself ready, and going out and playing a ball game.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that allowed me to do that was I really cared about the guys that I was with, and I liked being around them. And that was the one thing that kept me getting up and going.
Yeah, your responsibility was to them, not for the love of the game.
And that's a hard thing to deal with. And at that point, I was still not mature enough to go to God and say, help me with this. I've always, and that's one of the biggest catches with me and my makeup is I've always been the guy that says, I can fix this myself.
Same.
And I know that's a lot of men are the same way.
Same.
Because we feel like if we can't fix it, we're not good enough. We're not worthy. And so I was like, I've got to be able to fix this myself. So I wouldn't take it to God, and I wouldn't say, God, you got to help me because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I sat in my truck on campus a number of nights just in tears because I did not want to be there, and I did not want to do the thing that I was really good at, and that was play football. And so at the end of my redshirt sophomore year, I walked in and said, and just told the head coach, like, I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to go. And it just so happened that a friend of mine from high school, Evan Merrick, was at Campbellsville. We graduated together. We still stay in contact. He's at Marshall County. And he was long snapping for them. And he was like, we met one day working out. And he was like, dude, you should come to Campbellsville. And so I did. And it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But I was there for 2 years. And the one takeaway that I got from Campbellsville was that I fell in love with football again.
That's good.
So even without me going to God and saying, I need help because I can't do this, God's sitting there guiding your path. And the tough part is Tyler and I were, we had been dating for a couple of years, and the summer that I left Murray State was that fall she was coming to Murray State.
Oh, dang.
So she was, I was excited for her to come. She was excited because, we were going to be on campus together and we were going to spend a lot of time together. And then I leave. And so we had to do the long distance relationship. There was a lot of driving back and forth. I remember in the winter, I was working at a bowling alley in Campbellsville. I would get off at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's when we closed down, or we would shut down at midnight, and I would clean up. So about 1, I'd leave and I'd go and I'd drive down here. And then I would be here Saturday and then drive back Sunday.
Wow.
So it was kind of that thing, and it wasn't easy. And we separated for a short amount of time, and dated other people. But then, we ended up getting back together, and thank God we did, because I mean, it's she is the best.
You quickly found out there wasn't nobody else.
There's
better
not.
than Tyler.
There's not for me, and I know everybody has their somebody, and she is my somebody.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
I want to touch on a little bit. You were talking about, and I've talked about this on this podcast before, but you said you weren't far enough along in your walk really to rely on God.
Right.
But then you said you saw how He was moving things around and guiding your path. Did you see that in the moment, or just now looking back, you're like, oh, I see what you did there, God?
So a lot of it then was reflectionary. You're going through it and you're thinking, man, this is really good. Things seem to be lining up and working out, and things are working in my favor. But the lack of maturity in your walk doesn't allow you to connect the dots until a year down the road, 2 years down the road, when you're reflecting back, and you can call it being nostalgic or whatever.
Yeah.
You're reflecting on your past events, and realizing, God was ordering my steps through all that. God had all that lined up, even when I couldn't see what was going to happen, and I didn't feel good about anything. God had it all under control. Like He was taking care of me. And I think we tend to forget how important we are to Him. How He will move mountains to get to us, to protect us, to make sure that we're okay. And each one of us individually. I think we like to think. I worry sometimes that we think that God is so big that He protects us as a whole, which He does.
Yes.
But He's also present for each one of us individually, in our individual times of need, in our individual times of struggle, when we don't know or we don't realize that He's there. He's ordering our steps.
Yeah. That's so good. I didn't really learn that well until I became a father.
Right.
My relationship with God became so much more clear to me when I became a father, because we are a son or a daughter. You know, if you're a woman listening to this, you're a son, you're a daughter. And I think about now what I would do for my son,
Right.
my physical son. How much more would he do for us?
Right.
Individually,
Yeah.
like you said. That's very good.
Yep.
Yeah, we always think about God protecting us as a whole. I'm just meditating on what you said, because that's good. We do, especially as men, we get in the habit of not seeing that.
Yeah.
Our individual problems, or we see our problems as God's too big, or our problems are too small to bother God with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I have that mentality
Right.
a lot when it comes to
I've got to do
things.
this myself because God's got
I don't
bigger
want to.
things.
Yeah,
to
I don't
want to
bother you with this little
when
problem.
you think about, okay, there are wars going on, and there's a famine in the Sudan, and all I got to do, my problem is I've got to figure out how to manage where my kids are going to be staying while I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
Is that God's not worried about that.
Right.
God infinitely is worried about that,
Yes.
or not worried about it, but He's ordering that and making sure that my kids are going to be taken care of.
Yes.
Like He's concerned about that, and He's going to make sure that everything is ordered the way He wants it ordered.
Yeah.
And again, no problem is too small.
Yeah.
To take to Him and say, I can't fix it.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And like I said, I learned that when I became a dad, because I tell my kids sometimes, you can come to me and talk to me about that.
Right.
It's fine. You don't have to hide it. You don't have to be embarrassed or ashamed. Sometimes I'm embarrassed with some of the things I've gotten myself into.
Sure.
Then I'm like, I don't want to go to God with this,
Right.
even though He already knows.
Yep.
It ain't like I'm hiding it from
Right.
Him, but He already knows. So after Campbellsville and you graduated college, where'd you go there?
Yeah, so graduated and had an opportunity. I flew with a guy I played with to Charlotte. There was an upstart arena team there. So we met and spent some time with the head coach, and he kind of talked to us about this is what the team makeup's going to look like. I want you guys to be a part of it. Then that kind of fell through, and then I tried out for an arena team that was in Louisville at the time. They were called the Louisville Fire, and it wasn't at that point. There was Arena 1, which is what people see on TV, and there was Arena 2, and there were some other ones as well. But like Louisville Fire were Arena 2. So tried out there. I got a call back. They were interested in me coming to play. So I started asking them questions about what was the pay like. I said my degree is in education. Is that something that's possible? And then at that same point, I was with my relationship with Tyler. It was like, okay, I want to get married. And then I was thinking, okay, if we get married, is she going to want to move to Louisville, or are we going to live here? That kind of dynamic. And I think God has spoken to me more in the no's in my life than in the yeses.
Yeah.
And I think, when I look back on it, He doesn't speak to me in the yeses because I already want to do it. So I won't get any won't immediately see God in that. But I'm going through. Okay, it's $200 a game, which wasn't much, but like I'm gonna be playing professional football. Maybe there's a chance. And then they're like, no, we can't really get you into education. Probably gonna be doing a desk job. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't want to sit in a cubicle and do desk work.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, so the decision is going to be. I've been playing this game since I was 6 years old. I'm now 24. I know what my career path is going to be. I know who I'm supposed to marry.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that I want to take a chance on, or do I want to go ahead and start the rest of my life?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, it was I want to start the rest of my life, because, again, reflecting back on it, God was saying, "Hey, this is not something that you're going to do."
Yeah.
So, and again, we talk about ordering the steps. Immediately after that, or shortly after that, Tyler and I got engaged, and then a social studies position came open at Mayfield Middle School. And Joe called me. Of course, Joe and my dad knew each other from their times coaching against each other. They coached together on some all-star teams, and they had a good relationship. Immediately, Joe calls me and says, I want you to coach here if you want to. I need you to apply for that job. So I was like, okay. So I did it, and interviewed, got the job, and started my career at Mayfield. And I could not imagine myself being at a better place for me than being at Mayfield.
Cool.
And again, God's just putting all this together for me, and it comes out of a no.
Yeah.
And so that's where my football career ends, and where my teaching and coaching career begins. And it comes through God saying, I don't want you to do this.
So let me pause right there. A lot of what you're talking about is you're looking back and reflecting, and you're seeing like, I see how
it's not at this point, even me being 24 years old, it's not immediate.
Yeah.
Because the growth is still, I'm not at a level of maturity in my faith where I can see it instantly.
Yeah. So how are you wrestling with that? Because think of it like this. We may have some people listening who are wrestling with the no's right now.
Right.
And when you're in the moment, it's hard to see. Like you said, maybe they're not as far along in their walk. So in the no's, maybe they're wrestling with that no and not realizing that something's bigger. How did you wrestle with that in the moment?
In the moment, it's almost like the comfort you feel after you finish a good meal. Like you're hungry, you have those hunger pains, your stomach's growling, you're uncomfortable, and then all of a sudden you eat, and you just feel settled. You feel at peace. I guess
peace is the word you're looking for. Yeah.
So, but I'm trying to relate it to something that everybody kind of works through, especially when you're not mature enough in your faith that you can't see it for what it really is.
Yeah.
I think when the no's come or the door closes and you just feel at peace about it, you don't have anxiety about it. You don't have sleepless nights about it. You're not fearful about why the no came. It happened, and you're comfortable with it, and you're automatically ready to move on to the next process or the next step.
Yeah.
To me, when I reflect back, like those are the feelings that I had and the emotions that I went through when the door was closed, when the no came. Because, again, you're not at the point where my faith is mature enough to say, this is what's happening. And that's, so you just kind of feel that weight off your shoulder.
I got that. Yeah, I've experienced that several times too, of the peace after, because we have a path set in our mind, especially if you're the type of person that kind of wants a plan. I'm the type of person, once I have my mind on, all right, this is the plan my life's going to go, until you hit that wall, which is usually a no.
Yeah.
Then I'm the type of guy that's like, oh, this is a barrier in my way. Let me bust through that sucker.
Right. Right.
And most of the time, it's not. It's I'm trying to divert you back on. You veered off the path I want you on.
Right.
God telling me you veered off the path. I'm trying to guide you back onto the path I want.
Yeah.
And so sometimes there's a wrestling right there in that. But then when you're like, okay, maybe I should go this way, and then you feel that peace, you're like, this is where I was supposed to be. A lot of times we don't even realize the tension or the stress we're carrying with us.
Yeah.
Because we have our eyes set on the finish line that
Right.
God didn't even intend for us.
Right.
So you're carrying a lot of stress, you're carrying a lot of pressure.
Right.
Maybe even trying out for all these teams, doing all these things, and God may have been whispering, the gentle whisper, like, Stephen, this isn't the path I have for you. Yeah. And then when he finally said no and you chose the other way.
Right. And it could have been a realization when, we go to Charlotte and we come back and we feel good about it, and then it falls through really quick without a phone call, it was just one day he comes in, the guy I went with comes and tells me, he's like, look, it fell through. Like, they're not even going to do it within the next 3, 4, 5 years or whatever. I could have known then, okay, this may not be what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
But again, trying to bust through and determined I still want to try to play football, whatever, you go to the tryout.
Yeah.
And then you get even more tension and mixed emotions when you get the call back and you're like, hey, they liked your tryout, da-da-da. And, you're fighting that.
Yeah.
When the reality is, if you look back on it and you say, okay, if I would have just seen the writing on the wall then, I could have avoided all this other stress and tension and indecisiveness about what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, but the world tells you don't give up on your dream.
Absolutely.
So it's hard. You have to drown out the noise and listen to that still small voice, and sometimes that's hard to do.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, you talk about not giving up on your dream. Well, your dreams can change.
Very good.
When your goals can change, they can evolve and they can grow and they can become different. I mean, I always wanted to be a husband and a dad. Well, if I were to try to continue my football career, those things would have been put on hold.
Yeah.
And if I put them on hold, do they ever happen?
Yeah.
It could have been very, very different. So fortunate that it happened the way it did. And again, start my career at Mayfield, start coaching with Joe. I could not have asked for a better person to learn from, to grow with, to he developed me in terms of giving me the freedom to call the plays. He did that after my first year. He's like, look, I want you to call the offense next year. And I'm like,
wow.
Okay, I've just coached 1 year. Are you sure that this is what you want to do? Kind of thing. Of course, I was excited, and I said, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the relationship with him has been unbelievable, and I dreaded the day that he was going to say, I'm done.
Yeah.
Even though I know it's good for him, And there's always a time to say, this is it for me.
Yeah.
You don't look forward to it, especially when you're with a guy who is obviously successful, there's no doubt, but is so good to you as an individual.
Yeah, in our talks, the talk I had with him, man, he had just a ton of wisdom, even outside of the game of football.
Mm-hmm.
He had a ton of wisdom and I kept trying to pull it out of him. He's such a humble guy. He
very much so.
He won't really take credit for a lot of things, and I kept trying to pull it out of him. But I was like, sounds to me like you're just really good at raising up men. Because at one point he said, as a head coach, it's my job to coach the coaches as much as it is to coach the players.
Absolutely.
And he said that, and I was like, whoa, time out. I was like, that's a big statement that I didn't even really think about. Just because as the head coach, he's not only coaching the players, but he's coaching you too.
Absolutely. I mean, if people are never going to understand what our Sunday meetings during football season are like and what our post-practice talks are like. I would never do it justice trying to explain it.
Yeah.
But he does such a good job of, he was never demanding in terms of saying, this is what we're going to do. I don't care what you say. It was let's get all our ideas together. Let's figure out which one's the best. Mm-hmm. You may not, it was very adamant. I like this, but if you don't like it, let's not do it. Because essentially, what it had to come down to was we collectively had to come up with the best decision for our kids.
Yeah.
And he was very good at coaching us to, once we came to that decision, okay, this is how we're going to play this out. Mm-hmm. And he did. But at the same time, he also gives us the freedom to be who we are. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want me to be Joe Morris. He doesn't want Coach Stu to be Joe Morris.
Yeah.
He wants us to be who we are. And he gave us the freedom to do that as well.
Yeah.
So
he said that as much too. He said, I let my guys, mainly talking about offensive and defensive coordinator,
right.
So you and Coach Stu, he was like, I let them run their own stuff. He's like, now occasionally I'll be like, no, I don't want to blitz here, or
right.
No, we're going to run the ball here.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But he said for the most part, I allowed them to be and coach their general area.
And I think a lot of times that's why, yes, we're successful because ultimately you have good players, you're going to be successful. Now, the level of that success also depends on how well the coaches work together. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was fluid, it was seamless, it was we could have on the headsets, we could have open and honest conversations right in the middle of the game about what we needed to do, and we would 99% of the time we'd be on the same page in terms of what needed to happen. And did we butt heads and argue on different points at certain times? Yeah, but it never was to a point where we can't work together. It was he may not like my decision, I may not like his decision, but we're going to come together and we're going to figure out what's best.
Yeah. Were you nervous coming into that successful of an organization? Because on Joe's, we talked about how successful Mayfield High School has been
right.
as far as their football program go. He told me they hadn't had a losing season since like the 50s, maybe. Yeah. And he said like his worst season, where I think their final record was like 8-5. So it wasn't even a losing season, but it was one of their worst seasons. Mm-hmm. And after a game that they lost big, he came home to for sale signs in his yard. Yep. And I'm like, what kind of program is that to where it's still a winning season and people are thinking about kicking you out, But was there some intimidation from you coming into that?
No, I mean, because coaching with Joe kind of takes all the nervousness and intimidation away.
Okay.
Because he's so relaxed and comfortable in that environment.
Yeah.
You kind of play off his demeanor and you're fine. Now, I've always said this, going into a scrimmage, a game, I'm as nervous as I was when I was playing.
Yeah.
And the day that I'm not is the day that I need to say, this is it. I'm done.
I'm done.
Um,
I just want to take the opportunity and say thanks for watching At the Ready up to this point. If you like the content that we have to share, just take the time to like, share, subscribe. Go and leave us a positive 5-star review on wherever you're watching this. Apple Podcasts is a big one. So we can just spread the word of At the Ready and continue to reach more people with our content. So thank you so much for supporting the show and watching. Now let's get back to the show.
because I think you have to be passionate about what you're doing, and part of that passion is going into contest and being nervous about it because you're passionate about putting your kids in the best spot and doing the best you can do, and you're going to be disappointed in yourself if you don't. And I think there have been times when we've won ball games, but we didn't do as well as I thought we should offensively. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm not going to say, well, this kid didn't play well. I'm going to look at myself and say, what did I not do well to put us in the best spot to be the best that we could be?
Yeah.
And obviously I do that when we lose. But I think there are times that we've won, but offensively we haven't done well. I've done it even more so. And again, it goes back to I am passionate about these kids and making sure they're in the best spot to be successful. And if we're not as successful as I think we should be, I've got to reflect on that and figure out what I've got to do better for them.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not doing the best I can and putting forth the best effort for them, then I'm letting them down.
Yeah. It's so cool that I did these interviews on the same day, because I'm pretty sure you just regurgitated. You didn't even know I was interviewing Joe today, but you just regurgitated some of the exact same things he said. Like, I can tell that that's in your program.
We spent a lot of time together, so we can.
But I mean, I can tell that that's what you base your program around, because he said, hey, these are the things that we do. And he even made the statement of, when we win, a lot of times I would be like, we won because our players played a good game.
Absolutely.
But when we lose, he would say, we lost because the coaches let them down.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said those exact words. And I hear you saying the same
Right.
thing. Like, when we lost, or maybe when we didn't even win as much as I thought we should win
Right.
by, look at myself, what did I not do right?
Absolutely. I think
that's
that
cool.
I think that's the first. Society wants you to play the blame game, but I think when things don't go like they should, the first place you should look is yourself, and where did I fall short? Where did I not put forth the best effort? Where did I let others down? And what can I do to be better the next time? And I think if we did more of that, and being introspective instead of pointing fingers, I think society would be a lot better off.
Yeah. So wise people learn from their mistakes and they do better.
Right.
The wisest people learn from others' mistakes and do better.
Yeah.
So we especially want to learn from our own, but you can be even better if you can learn from others' mistakes. So even you, as an assistant under Joe, if you can look at, Joe made this mistake once upon a time, I don't want to do that,
Right.
then that's even more wisdom on
Right.
you. One of the things that Joe brought up, and I think would be cool to ask you, is you guys are a pretty small school. Like, I think my graduating class at Graves, which is our county high school,
Right.
was like 387. You remember how many you had?
275, I think.
Oh,
was
you
ours.
were a little bit smaller class.
Yeah.
But now I'm seeing they're having classes of over 400.
Yep.
450 something.
Yep.
And that might be the entire population of Mayfield, the city high school.
Right.
So you have a lot smaller pool to choose from as far as players go. And one of the things that Joe brought up, in my mind, I've always thought of Mayfield as we have our scheme, we have the type of things we run, and that's just what we've been doing for years, and it don't work. And Joe was like, nah, it's actually the opposite. He said, depending on our players, we kind of have to change up what we do year to year. He said, this year we might be able to have a 3-man front on defense because of our players, but next year it might have to be a 5-man because, we have smaller guys and we need to stack the line or something, So talk to me a little bit about that, about year to year having to be fluid, having to be able to change.
Yeah, one of the things that we've always done, and I saw Dan Mullen, who was the head coach at Florida and then the head coach at Mississippi State, and did that thing. He talked about once the season's over, that team is over.
Yeah.
It's next year's team. We can't go back and reflect on who we had the year before and what they did and what we did well, because for example, what the team in 2023 did really well, we've got a different group of kids. Are some a carryover? Yes. But the dynamic of the team has now changed. So what do we have in terms of personnel and kids, and within that, what can they do well?
So did y'all immediately start doing that? Like, 2023 season is over. Do y'all immediately start looking at, okay, we got this many kids graduating, but we got this kids coming up?
Kind of depends on if we won or lost the last game.
Oh, okay.
So we'll take, let me put it like this. Whatever happens in the last game, win or lose, we're going to celebrate the season for a little bit. And we're gonna talk about and we're gonna reflect on the season. But when we go home for Christmas break, we're getting away from it. When we come back in January, we're already having conversations about what gaps need to be filled, what positions. Do we need to move people to different spots? Because they're going to fit better. We project what we hope kids do in the off season to get bigger, faster, stronger, those type things. How much work they put in when we're watching them, how much work they put in when they think we're not watching them, but we know. We notice those things. We can tell this kid's putting in extra work or things like that.
Yeah.
And then we kind of develop a simple plan going into spring, and then we push it through the spring. And we always have new things that we want to try. Like, we think this team's going to be good at doing this. Like you said, changing from an odd front to an even front, or from a 3 to a 5-man or whatever. We'll say, okay, I think with the guys that we've got coming back, we'll be good at doing this. So let's try this in the spring. It may be really good. It may be awful. And we walk away from spring, we're like, okay, we can't. That's not something we can do. But then we may answer some other questions in the spring and say, okay, let's develop this plan going into summer, because as we were doing spring ball, these are the things that we saw, and it's going to be good for us. So, we develop that, and then we get into summer ball. And, of course, for the last 4 years, we haven't had to decide on who the starting quarterback was going to be. Well, now we do again. So we've got to go through that process as well in determining who's going to, best fit what we do. And it's not like in college when I've got my set offensive scheme, so I'm going to recruit similar styles of quarterbacks to come and play my scheme.
Right.
We've got several quarterbacks, and they all do different things well. Yeah. So determining who ends up being the starter is going to determine a lot about some of the things that we do. Now, some of the things are going to stay the same, but it could be different based on who we've got.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe brought that up, and I didn't, me not playing football or coaching much, I didn't really think that much into it.
Yeah.
When I was in school and you were in school, Mayfield was a pound the football running kind of team, and
Right.
they beat you by time of possession and just running
Right.
over you. They weren't really a passing, high scoring
Right.
team. But in the last few years, y'all have been, because you've had a
Right.
pretty big stud of a quarterback, and
Yeah.
it's different
And
things.
that's the it's funny you say that, because that's kind of the misnomer, or the misidentity of what we do. The reality of it is we are still at worst we're 60-40 run pass.
Yeah.
At best, some of our best games we're even 70-30. But the passing yards tend to come from big plays.
Yeah.
And we do spread people out. Like we have, and it's funny when you talk about the evolving of what Mayfield does offensively. It came about because for years they had big offensive linemen, they had big backs. I remember watching them. Like when I was little, we'd go to the state championship games, and I would watch. We played against. When we were in Anderson County, we played against Danville every year. They were in our district. So big, strong, fast. I mean, these guys were huge. Well, Mayfield was very similar. Big, strong offensive linemen, big, strong, fast running backs. So what are we going to do? We're double tight. We're wishbone. We're broken bone. We're running the ball down your throat. We're time of possession. These guys at some point may break one.
Yeah.
And if they do, they're going to outrun you.
Yep.
But by the time that I got there, the big offensive linemen were few and far between for whatever reason.
Yeah.
We had less of those. We didn't have any guys that could really play true tight end, put your hand in the ground, but we had little guys
Yeah.
that we could spread people out with. And so that was how we were going to be most successful. Well, now the evolvement has come kind of back toward that. We've got some guys that can play tight end. We've got some bigger backs where we haven't had those in the past.
Yeah.
And they can still run, but they're a little bit bigger than what we've typically had. And so you're going to see more tight end use and those kind of things.
Yeah.
And that's just the way the game evolves. And you're going to see it more so at the high school level than anywhere else because, again, college level, I walk in as the OC or I walk in as the defensive coordinator or I'm the head coach and this is what we're going to do. Now go recruit the kids.
Yeah, go get me a kid.
Go get me the kid that fits it.
Yeah.
At the high school level, you are not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Let me just put it that way. So
Mayfield's not doing a lot of that. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, no,
sure.
we're not.
Yeah.
People say that we do. It's just,
you get the kids that you get.
We get the kids that we get, and we love the kids that we got. And, the biggest thing about it is they're passionate about what they do. I think a lot of people look at kids and like, well, this kid's bigger, this kid's faster, this stronger. Well, is he passionate or is she passionate about what she's doing?
Yeah, that's good.
And it doesn't matter how big and fast and strong you are. If you're not passionate about it and you're not invested in it, you're not going to be very good.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we talked about Mayfield, with Joe, I talked about Mayfield just having such a strong tradition in the football. I'm sure kids, from the time they can walk, they're carrying a football, and that's all they dream of is playing,
Absolutely.
For the football team someday.
Those guys, and that's what's special about it is those kids, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, by the time they can understand the game, those high school kids are their heroes.
Yeah.
And I remember being the same way when I was growing up. Like I was in the locker room with those. I was, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, and I'm in the locker room with these high school guys, and they are the greatest human beings on the planet to me. I wanted to do everything that they did. I wanted to, go to practice with them. I wanted to sit in the locker room with them. And I wanted to just soak up every second that I could. and they were so gracious. Those guys that I hung around, they were so gracious. They let me do it. Like they were just, and our kids do a lot of the same thing.
Yeah.
They let those kids be a part of it, and they'll toss a football around with them, or they'll run a route with them, or they'll teach them little things here and there, and that's kind of where this passion develops, because they'll invest, and they don't have to invest a lot of time. They can invest a couple minutes here before or after a game, a couple minutes there before or after practice, and those kids they've been bitten by the bug for life.
Yeah.
And they want to do what those guys do on Friday night.
So one of the things that I'm kind of seeing through this bigger picture, we're talking about the game of football, but bigger picture, you as coaches are pouring into these high school boys, hopefully, more than just football, morals and values and stuff like that. And then whether they realize it or not, they're in turn doing the same thing to the generation below them, the ones up and coming. I remember one of my oldest son's practices when he was in elementary school. The high school sent some of their upperclassmen to the practices, like toward the end of the season, and so they came just in their jerseys.
Yeah.
But I remember those elementary school kids, how big their eyes got when like 3 of the varsity players showed up at their practice and kind of helped and played with them. It meant the world to those kids.
Well, those kids know who they are, and it doesn't matter if they're the guy who gets all the highlights on Friday night or if they're a spot player on defense.
Yeah.
Like, those elementary school kids know who those guys are.
Yeah.
And when they show up with their jersey on, like, I know your name, I know who you are, I know what position you play. They know those things because those are their heroes. And we have conversations all the time about the eyes that are watching you.
That's good.
And behaving in a manner that shows those kids how to act correctly when they get into your position.
Yeah.
It's leaving that legacy of doing the right things.
Yeah, that's good. What are I asked Joe some questions. Some of them won't apply to you, but I'll ask too. You're offensive coordinator. You work with the quarterbacks a lot. You know? What are some non-negotiables for you as far as for your players? Hey, if you're going to play for me, these are some things that you're going to do. What are some non-negotiables?
My only non-negotiable. I mean, mistakes are going to happen, and I tell them that. Like, you're going to make a mistake. But the biggest pet peeve of mine is their effort.
Okay.
And I tell them, we're going to do our best to get you in the right spot, to get you lined up correctly. And then it's your job to provide the effort. And we talk about, little things. You, like as a receiver, run goes away. What are you doing on the backside? And we give them some different things that they can do. But the one thing they've got to do is they've got to give us some effort. When we talk about running backs and pass protection, you're going to get the ball. We're going to hand you the ball. You're going to run the ball. I know when the ball's in your hands, you're going to give us great effort. Like, what does it look like when you don't get the ball, when I'm asking you to pick up a blitz or pick up a pressure? What does that look like? Are you just throwing a shoulder in, or are you really getting after it to make sure that your guy back here has time to get the throw off and make a play?
Right.
And to me, that is the one non-negotiable. I think you have to understand in college and the professional level, it's different. There are going to be other non-negotiables. But to me, if high school kids understand what great effort looks like, because mistakes are going to happen. Yeah. It's hard to be a high school kid and play a sport. It's hard to sit in a classroom for 7 hours and then come out and try to prep for a game.
Yeah.
And people think that football is simple, and it is by far. It is as far from simple as it can get.
Yeah.
I mean, it's extremely complex what we ask these kids to do. We put a lot on their plate, and they're going to make mistakes. And I'm okay. We can correct mistakes. Like, I may get miffed about it a little bit. I may get onto you a little bit about making a mistake.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks know that firsthand. the kid who just graduated, Zane Cartwright. I think he made the comment coming into last year that he's finally going to see me smile. But I mean, I'm just passionate about it and passionate about. I want them to do well.
Yeah.
And I find it very difficult to give compliments a lot because I'm so passionate about them doing well and being the best that they can be. Like, if it's not your best, I don't want to give you a compliment, even though maybe I should because it was better than the rep before.
Yeah. Oh, my wife gets on to me all the time with my son, did you tell him what he did good? I'm like, well, he didn't do anything good.
Right. Yeah. And it's like you got to pick out something that they did good.
Yeah.
The kids need encouragement. They need to know that they did well. But, over the years, I've come to tell myself, like, it's okay for them to make mistakes because they're high school kids.
Yeah.
They're going to do it. Let's fix the mistakes. The one non-negotiable is what kind of effort are you giving us?
Yeah.
Because if you're not giving us good effort, then we got to find somebody else. They might not be as talented as you, but if they're going to give us great effort, we can win with that.
They'll be more consistent.
Absolutely.
Than the talent who gives effort only when they feel like.
Right.
Well, there's a couple of different things. There's a couple other things that I feel like is important to build, and I just want your opinion on them. One is attitude, and the second is resilience. And what I mean by resilience is being able to have a couple bad plays.
Right.
Maybe they get yanked off the field because their head's not in it or they're not giving effort.
Right.
Are they able to self-correct on the sideline and then turn around and have the attitude of, okay, I'm ready to get back in
It varies from kid to kid. We've been blessed here in the last several years to have a lot of kids with great attitudes. That even when they have a difficult time taking coaching, and they may spout off and say something that they didn't mean, they're able to come back and say, "I was wrong.
Yeah, that's big.
You're
that's
right. And sometimes we have to go to them.
Yeah,
but they're open to that once we give them a chance to kind of de-escalate themselves. And we also understand that football, whether it's practice, game, weightlifting, it is an intense, passionate game, and sometimes your emotions are going to get the best of you.
Yeah.
As long as it's not a consistent thing where we're having to deal with it every day, we get it. You're going to have a bad day. I'm going to have a bad day.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be off. So if you had a bad day and said something you didn't mean because we got on to you, okay, take a break, and then let's come back and let's talk about it.
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to their maturity level. For example, I had a kid who, as a freshman, he's going to be a junior. As a freshman, I was very concerned about his attitude and his resilience. Because on the JV team, if he didn't get the ball once every 3 plays, he was open and the quarterback didn't throw him the ball, like he was throwing a fit, and he would shut down. And he has all kinds of talent, but I'm worried about it because I'm like and I told him, and I think that's the one thing that we don't do enough of today is we don't sit down and tell kids the truth.
Yeah.
Like, speak honestly to them. Don't beat around. Like, it's okay if what you say, because it's the truth, rubs them the wrong way, as long as you explain yourself and you guys can come to some kind of, oh yeah, I see it now. You're right.
Yeah.
I think too often we try to be soft with kids because I don't know if we don't want to hurt their feelings, or we're too mindful of their emotions, when the reality is that a lot of times they just need you to tell them the truth.
Yeah.
And so we sat down and had a conversation and I told him, I said, and yes, you've got to be positive with them, but at the same time, like, be honest. I told him, I said, you have all kinds of talent, but this is what we've got to work on, and it's your attitude and how you handle things when they don't go the way you want them to, when you don't get the ball and you think you should.
Right.
when you're not getting the ball and you're mad about it, so you're not giving good effort doing the other things that we need you to do to be successful, whether that be blocking or coming in on a special team and helping us out there. And we continued to have those conversations and talked about those kind of things throughout his freshman going into his sophomore year. Like, you just don't leave it one time. You continue, and that's part of, and again, part of telling the kids the truth is you have to have some kind of positive relationship with them. Like, you can't just, you're wrong, but not have any relationship with that child at all, because then they're not going to listen to you. So the relationship's there, and I'm continually having conversations with this kid, and I'm not. It wasn't me. I'm not taking credit for it because it wasn't me. You know, it was him making the conscious effort to, I've got to be better. Now, the encouragement, I wanted to encourage that in him, but he made the effort.
Right.
And the change in his attitude and his ability to be resilient from his freshman to sophomore year, he became a key part of us winning a state championship. Now, did he get the ball as much as he wanted? No. But he didn't let it bother him to the point where he couldn't play. He continued to do the little things, the other things that we asked him to do. And then towards the end of the season, you know, he started to get the ball a little bit more, and he started making plays that we knew he was capable of, but just getting those little opportunities, and those opportunities came because of a great attitude and his ability to be resilient. And now, I mean, he's just blossomed into this unbelievable worker. He's gotten so much. He's taken his talent and he's blossomed that and become better. And I'm excited to see what he's going to do. Because of those kind of things. Now, some kids don't get there till they're a senior. And it's hard not to overlook those kids because they haven't developed the way you thought they would, and then all of a sudden they're going to go into their senior year, and you're like, I don't know if they can help us. You like them as a kid; they're a great kid. We have those conversations, but I'm not sure where they fit. And then all of a sudden, the light switch goes on, and they kind of figure out, oh, this is my last shot. This is kind of the way I need to be doing things. And you know, we've got a couple of kids like that. They're going in their senior year, and they've kind of been on the fence about how they want it to be. And now they've kind of made the decision, like, this is my last shot. I've got to do everything possible to play. And that includes attitude, that includes effort, that includes doing the little things. And so, you know, I think again, it's kid to kid. Like, some kids walk in as freshmen and they're ready to go. That's not very often. But they're solid.
I'm kind of getting a little conviction as a dad here, because one of the things that frustrates me more than anything about my son is attitude and resilience. Effort's a big thing. I want to see him give 100% effort, but my son can have a terrible game as far as stats go. And I'm going to use basketball for an example, because at basketball you sit on a bench. It's a little bit different than football. Football you can kind of hide hide on the sideline, but basketball you sit on that bench and you're visible. And nothing would aggravate me more as a father to watch my son miss a couple 3 shots in a row, and then, you know, or make a couple mistakes, turnovers, whatever, and the coach pull him out, and then him go all the way down there to the end of the bench and sit and sulk or pout, you know. And, I mean, I would just stare holes through him the whole time from the stands up there. My wife, you know, elbowing me like, leave him alone. I'm like, he needs to, like, sit up and look like, all right, I've screwed up. You know, let's focus on the next play. And let's look eager. Let's look eager to get in. You know, if I'm a coach and I look down that bench, you know, and I said the same thing on Joe's episode. If I look down that bench and, you know, I might have put you in, but you're all pouty and not looking like you're ready to go in. I'm skipping over you and going to the next kid.
Right.
But if you're set up, ready, like I know I made a mistake, coach, but I'm ready to go back in. Your body language says a lot. So those are the kinds of things that I like preach to my kid after games. I don't care nothing about. I'm not telling him like, well, you missed that 3 because your form was off or because you were looking here. That's the coach's job to fix those things. Where me as a dad, I'm like, dude, you didn't get a whole lot of playing time because your attitude sucked.
Yeah,
you were sitting down there pouting. So those are the things I feel like if they can learn sooner, it helps them later. And that's kind of what I got from you too.
Yeah. And I think about that too. It's like, we've had kids that have had bad games. I mean, they've been off. They've dropped passes. They've fumbled. They've thrown picks. Their blocking percentage was terrible. Those kind of things. I mean, it happens. And I think, again, one of the responsibilities of a coach is, and it's harder for a head basketball coach because he's constantly like, if I think about our head basketball coach Croft, I mean, he's up and down, moving constantly, and then, but I think he's done a great job of, his assistants getting them to, okay, if I'm pulling a guy out because he's not playing well, I want you to make sure they sit next to you and you talk them through it.
Gotcha. I think that's great coaching.
Yeah, because at that point, part of that is teaching the kid to be resilient, but you also have to know there's a fine line between just the right amount of talk and too much, like going overboard. So there are times when a kid may come off and I've got an opportunity to talk to him, and I may just let him go. Yeah. It's not the right time, but a lot of times, if a kid's not doing well and it's visibly noticeable that they're struggling with the fact that they're not playing well, we'll pull them out and we'll talk. And I think that is a big part of teaching resilience because the talks center around being better. Like I'm not getting on to you because you dropped the ball. I'm not getting on to you because you fumbled. We're not going to do that. What we are going to talk about is how you bounce back from that. Yeah. And having those real conversations. Because, I think about just my life in general. I've had to bounce back from crap a lot. Just stuff that, again, this should have gone this way and it didn't. And I'm not happy about it. And it's crappy and it sucks, for lack of a better term. And, I think it's okay to talk about the fact that sometimes life just sucks.
It does.
But how do we move forward? Because you can't just, I think there's a time, I think if I get emotional, just hang with me. But my mom passed away in March. You talk about unexpected. We thought she was having stroke symptoms. Comes back, she's cancer covers her body.
Oh man.
And when we got the diagnosis, it wasn't months or weeks. It was days. You need to get yourself ready. And then all of a sudden she's gone. And for a time period there, I thought it was okay to just sit in the suck. Is what I talked about. That's what I told myself. I'm just going to sit in the suck. Yeah. Because it sucks. Somebody I'm a mama's boy. Always have been. And the hardest part was you just took for granted that she was always going to be there. And then now all of a sudden the doctor says days, and it was literally days, and she's not there anymore. But I can't just I can't just sit in the suck. I can't do that forever. There's a time period for that. But telling myself that God's got her, I'm going to see her again, that helps me pick myself up and move forward. Because you've got to, for my kids' sake, for my wife, you've got to move on. You've got to get up and go. I miss her every day. You know, I'll have tears. I told somebody, I said, I think about my mom 1,000 times a day. She's never not in my mind. Mm-hmm. But she also wouldn't want me to just sit there and sulk and miss her and not be a good husband and a good dad. Mm-hmm. You know, because that's not the way she raised me.
Right.
You know, just it was I remember my mom, she taught my brother and I how to clean the house, clean the bathrooms, sweep the floors, dust, mop, the whole deal. I mean, she taught us how to do it.
Yeah.
And I went upstairs with my daughter a couple days ago. She's got her own room now, her own bathroom. Her mother did a phenomenal job of redecorating. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's a Harry Potter themed bedroom. She's got the drop down candles that hang from the ceiling and everything. It's really cool. She did a phenomenal job. But the one caveat was that she had to keep it clean. Mm-hmm. And I went up there, and the whole time I'm teaching her how to clean a bathroom properly and how to sweep the floors and how to dust, I'm thinking about my mom. Because my mom didn't want me to be a husband that did not consider cleaning the house a wife's job. Yeah. She wanted me to make sure that I understood that it should be 100%, 100%. Mm-hmm. I should be doing as much or more to alleviate some of those duties as Tyler.
Yeah.
And I to me, it was an extremely cool moment for me that I was teaching my daughter the same things that my mom had taught me.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. We talk about, one of the things I was thinking about as you were telling that story is, as men, you said when a kid comes off the field mm-hmm. and comes to the sideline, a lot of times you have somebody there who can talk to them,
right.
encourage them,
right.
and give them positive reinforcement. Hey, we did this wrong, but this is how we're going to do it better, so that they don't sit in the suck. But sometimes as men, we don't have that person to do that.
No.
So we have to build that resilience in ourselves.
Right.
Just like your situation with your mom.
Yeah.
I know you have family there, but sometimes those family members are looking to us to be, as the men of the family, they're looking to us to be the strong person.
Yeah.
To encourage everybody else.
Right.
And sometimes that's hard and sucks.
And that's, the fortunate thing for me, and I know everybody doesn't have this, but I've got 2 brothers and I've got a sister, and I feel so much closer to them now mm-hmm. Than I did. Josh lives in Tennessee. Jessica lives at the house with my dad, and she's going to be able to take over the house. And then Todd lives and coaches and works with me mm-hmm. at Mayfield. But we've had more conversations. We've seen each other more, and we've confided in each other more here recently than we have in a long time. Mm-hmm. And we've always been close, but we're together and then we're apart and we're doing our own thing. And then Tyler has been a rock for me to lean on. I could never explain how amazing she is in terms of just how I'm glad she had a vision of what she wanted her husband to be, because mm-hmm. I wanted to be a husband, but I had no idea what it was supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've screwed stuff up a lot along the way. Mm-hmm. But she never gave up on me. She never. She was disappointed, like in poor choices, but she's always been encouraging, and she's always tried to move me in the right direction. And I am where I am today in terms of being closer to who God has called me to be than ever. And a lot of that has to do with her, and how strong she is.
Yeah.
And how she wasn't willing to compromise with the expectation of what a husband is supposed to be, and what God wants you to be as my husband.
Yeah.
So
that's good. And I mean, when you find that partner that God has for you, I think all those things fall into place.
Yeah.
God said early on with Adam, it's not good for man to be alone, and so I'm going to create a helper for him, a mate. And when you have that person, it makes life a lot easier. And I'm sure with your profession and career and with coaching, there's a lot of time there where you're investing in the kids and you're not.
Yeah.
And so how does she deal with that as far as?
And that's one of the things that that had to grow and develop was she knows that when I do something, I'm all in. Like I am invested, and I had to learn. And it wasn't an instant. It wasn't overnight. It wasn't in 1 year. It wasn't in 2 years. It was in several years of doing this, and her helping me along the way, learn how to manage and balance my time with the football program at school, doing my job, and then being at home, and being what I need to be there. And a lot of that focused on, and she would tell you this, a lot of that focused on me being there physically, but being absent mentally, emotionally, socially.
Yeah.
Like I mean, for all intents and purposes, there were a lot of times that I used to come in and I would just sit on the couch and I'd be there, but having a conversation wasn't going to go anywhere. Me being emotionally invested in her or my kids wasn't going to be there.
There's a difference between you being present, and your presence being there.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you were just kind of present.
Yeah,
my body's here.
My body's here, but I wasn't there for anything else. Yeah. And that's not even being a husband or a parent at all. That's just you're just another body in the room. So learning how to, and honestly, my mind was going through what I just left. Like I never checked out of that.
Yeah.
And so, it got to the point where I had to tell myself, okay, Tyler's right in terms of I've got to be more, my presence has to be here. I have to be invested in what's going on in the home. I can't just come home and sit down and veg out and avoid everything else that's going on. So I either have to figure out how to manage that, turn that off, and be more invested here, or I got to stop doing that. And honestly, through just getting in God's Word more and being more intent on reading and understanding what it is to be a good husband, to be a good dad, to invest in my family, made me, and again, Tyler's working with me through this process, made me better at home, but it also made me a better football coach and a better administrator, because I could be emotionally invested in relationships with kids there better. I was better at home, and it made me, in my opinion, it made me better there.
Yeah, because your first ministry is always to your home first.
Right.
I don't know if you look at it this way, but your coaching and even your job in an essence is a ministry. You're pouring into kids every day. Your
Right.
staff that works under you, your staff on the football field. But all that's out of order if your home life's not right first.
Absolutely.
And big of you to notice that, with the help of your spouse.
Yeah.
A lot of times, God called them a helper for a reason. Sometimes as men, we get tunnel vision. We get focused on,
Yep.
hey, I'm doing this.
Right.
We need that helper to come along
Right.
to say, hey, don't forget about your first ministry, which is us.
Right.
Me as your spouse, and then your kids,
Right.
and then that other stuff. I've even had my wife check me, since I started this podcast, because I'm a lot like you. I get my teeth in something and I'm focused on it. And this is, I feel like God's called me to do this. Even my wife said, I no doubt that God's called you to do what you're doing.
Right.
But don't forget, your first ministry is not that podcast.
Right.
Your first ministry is us.
Yeah.
She didn't say it quite as nicely as that, but my wife is the exact opposite of yours. You're from what I remember of Tyler, she's very soft spoken, very calm always, and
Right.
then my wife is very alpha female and does not mind putting you in your place if
Yeah.
she has to, which is good. That's what I needed
Yeah.
to sometimes, but. Our first ministry is always home, so it's good that she worked with you in that.
Yeah.
And that you've seen that.
Yeah. And I needed some hard truth sometimes. I needed, your feelings are kind of hurt when she first she starts to tell you, okay, this is not good. This is not right. You're not doing the things that you need to do. Because a lot of times I felt like it was a personal attack, like you're coming at me. And so my first reaction was to go even further into a shell. I don't know if you've ever gone through the Enneagrams.
I have not.
I'm a 5. So basically the short explanation of that is I'm not very social. I don't have a lot of close friends. I'm very invested in learning and knowledge and wisdom. But the simple truth of it is where most people wake up in the morning with a battery, like a cell phone, a battery's on 100%. And it either stays at 100% for some people, or it gradually decreases throughout the day as they have positive and negative interactions with people. Mine starts at 25%, and one bad interaction could go from 25 to 0, and then I go into a shell, and I don't want to deal with people the rest of the day.
Gotcha.
Now, knowing that about myself actually helps me to see that coming and be able to work on ways, whether it's getting into Scripture at that moment and reading, or one of my favorite things to do is listen to music. Music, God speaks to me. I know God speaks in a lot of different ways, but God speaks to me through music, and it's unbelievable how specific the song is at the point when I need it.
Yeah.
And so I love music. I'll listen to Maverick City music. I'll listen to Elevation Worship. And those are my 2 top choices if I'm going to choose. But just the specifics of what is in the song at that moment is just, it's unreal. And that helps me to navigate the fact that I don't have a lot of battery life when dealing with people, which is crazy to think because I'm an assistant principal, so I deal with people all day. And the odd thing is that kids don't drain my battery very much. Adults do. Adults do.
Wow.
So getting to deal with kids, as I say, a lot of kids on their worst day is a lot easier for me than dealing with an adult. So
Gotcha. I got a couple questions before we wrap up here. One, I'm asking this one kind of selfishly and for a coach friend of mine. He asked the question, as a coach, you're always getting older.
Yeah.
And players stay the same age, right? Year
Right.
after year, you're coaching the same age group.
Yep.
How do you stay connected with your players? And let me broaden it a little bit. Don't even think coaching players as much as like I teach. I can't do kids like high school and below because their attitudes. The military comes out at me, and I just want to yell and make them do push-ups.
Yeah.
But I do teach young adults, so like 18 to 25. Right. So I kind of even want to know on a broader spectrum as I'm getting older. Like I'm almost 40. You're what, 41?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as you start to get older, how do you still stay connected with the players or that age group that you're teaching or discipling, you know?
I will say it's not social media.
It's not social media?
Not.
Okay.
I have one Twitter account that is my assistant principal's account. Mm-hmm. So the only thing that's on that is school-related, sports-related.
Yeah.
I don't have any other social media.
Yeah, I know. It was hard for me to get a hold of you. I actually had to go through your wife to get a hold of you to schedule this.
There are too many. Obviously, I think we know social media has gone the wrong direction in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it was too easy for me to get to feel like I was going to get connected into some of those things. So I just got rid of all of it. So it's not social media.
Yeah.
What helps me is they know who I am.
Okay.
Like I'm not putting on a front for them. I'm not being fake. When they walk in to work out in the morning, I'm already in there. Mm-hmm. I have YouTube on, and it's praise music. And they're too afraid to change it. They want to listen to what they – I mean, I was in high school. It was Tupac. It was Biggie.
Yeah.
That's what I grew up on, AC/DC, Metallica. That's what we listened to.
Yeah.
So, and they're not any different. They're listening to what's popular today.
Right.
My daughter has a Swiftie T-shirt. I don't mind that. We listen to Taylor Swift every once in a while.
I'm glad I didn't have daughters.
We're enjoying it.
Yeah, okay.
She's a lot of fun. But when they walk in, and if I'm the first one in there, I'm turning on that TV. I'm putting on YouTube, and we're listening to. That's what I work out to. Yeah. People are like, "You work out to pray?" Yes, I get goosebumps. It gets me going. Mm-hmm. That's what I work out to.
I do too sometimes.
So when they walk in, and again, they're not going to change it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they won't even change it when I'm done and I go into the office. They'll just leave it on. Yeah. But they're like, okay, that's Coach Hatchell. He's listening to that. We're not, but they know that's who I am.
Yeah.
They know that I genuinely care about them beyond football. I do feel like a lot of the kids would tell you that my relationship with them goes beyond football. I mean, we have conversations about. I mean, we've got high school kids that are dads.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. It's reality. So we have conversations about being a dad and what that looks like. We have conversations about finances and what that should look like. We have conversations about the future. It's not just about let's go win a football game.
Right.
And it's never, for me, it's never been that. Do we win a lot of games? Do we win state championships? Absolutely. But if we never won another one, I would be okay as long as – and I know I can't positively affect all of them. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, it's we talk about it all the time. You wish you could save them all. But the reality is that I cannot. Mm-hmm. God can do that. God can take care of that. My job is to be a light. That's what my job is. My job is to have relationships with these kids. Help them, give them something positive that you hope they will take into being young men, to being husbands, to being dads. So it goes way beyond football. To me, football is just a microscopic part of that. I'm not afraid to hug them. We were told, I remember this, we were told a long time ago, don't show affection to kids because they could take it the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And I get that. I understand where that comes from.
Right.
But I'm going to hug these kids. If I have a positive relationship with them, and I'm not going to say I have a relationship with all of them that goes beyond football, because my personality doesn't. I think that's the hard thing, is the politically correct thing to do is to be friends with everybody. Well, right. I can't be friends with everybody because my personality and this person's may not mix.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have a positive relationship with one of our other coaches. And it's going to be good for them to have that.
Yeah.
I've got kids that I have positive relationships with. And those kids, I want all the kids to know that I care about them. But I'm going to hug them. We're going to talk about things that go way beyond football. Mm-hmm. I let them joke about me and how I am getting older. Mm-hmm. I don't mind that. They can make fun of me. They can pick at me. I'm going to joke with them a little bit, and we're going to laugh and we're going to have a good time. But they also know what the expectations are, and we're not going to deviate from that. So, but I don't think it matters if they're 15 and I'm 65. If they know that I care about them and that it's not just about football, then everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And it's going to be good.
So I asked this exact same question to Joe, and you both said one word that jumped out to me, and I think just way broader than football and everything else is the answer to a lot of our questions, and that word's relationships. Mm-hmm. He said the same thing. For these kids to trust me, we have to have a relationship.
Yeah.
And you brought up the social media before. Social media is a tool.
Yes.
Right? Just like those that were building the Tower of Babel, right? Mm-hmm. The brick was the tool that they used to build that tower. The brick itself wasn't bad.
Right.
It's how they chose to use it to glorify themselves. Let's build us a tower to get to heaven.
Right.
Our cell phones and social media is the same thing. It's a tool.
Yep.
How we use that tool makes a difference. The problem is, like what you said, this tool is being used for a lot of the wrong reasons.
Absolutely.
And we think that it's bringing us closer together with people, but it's really distancing us.
It is.
Because I post some things, I post a podcast, somebody might watch me once a week for a couple hours and they feel like they know me, but do they really?
Right.
They don't have a relationship with me.
Yeah.
And so people might even go as far as to judge some of the things I do.
Right.
Because they think they can, because they think they know me, but in reality they don't. They don't have a relationship. So I've talked before on here, the difference between judgment and accountability.
Yeah.
Right? At the level of our relationship, mine and yours right now, mm-hmm. I really can't judge anything or say to you anything that you do in your life because we don't have a close relationship.
Right.
Outside of me knowing who you are and you know who I am. Our relationship is a little bit closer now because we've just spent 2 hours talking to each other. Right. But if I see you out in public and I'm like, man, Stephen doesn't need to be doing that, that's me judging you. But if I'm your friend and I know your family well, I know what you do, I know maybe we go to church together and I'm like, hey, Stephen, this is not something that you should be doing. Right. That's accountability. Yeah. That's a different story. Yeah. And so we think social media helps us grow our relationships, but really it don't.
It does not.
Distances us.
Yep.
It distances
Yep.
us, and we think we have relationships that we don't.
Yep. I get on kids at lunch all the time. You know, they're all sitting at a table, and they're all looking at their phones and doing different things with their phones, and I'm like, you know, and again, this is aging me a little bit, and then sometimes I say, man, we don't do that anymore. But I'm just like, guys, we used to sit and have conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're looking each other in the eye, and we're talking, we're having conversations. We didn't FaceTime each other to interact. Like, if I wanted to see my buddy, I roll my bike down to his house.
Yeah.
And if he wasn't there, I'm sitting on the porch until he gets back.
Yeah.
And it could be 30 minutes or an hour and a half. But or I'm going to leave and I'm going to come back. Like, that was kind of the relationships that we had growing up. And but within that, we knew. I think we developed, like, we knew when things were good in the home with mom and dad and with our friends, and when things weren't, and when our buddies needed to get out of the house, and when they did. And I'm not saying like every friend I had, their parents had trouble. I mean, most of them, you know, mom and dad were there. It's a good relationship, but there were times when, you know, you'd be over at the house, and all of a sudden he'd look and say, "Hey man, can we go? Yeah, let's go." And we took care of each other in that respect, in that aspect. You know, and
I don't know if kids have relationships like that anymore.
They have relationships, but the dynamic has changed so much. And it's not just kids; it's adults too, because adults have become overwhelmingly focused with Facebook and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and again, they think that. Because somebody posted something on Facebook and they read about it, now all of a sudden we have a connection and we have a relationship. But the reality is you do not. So, and then we become super, super judgy on social media as well. When we have, again, you're judging, you're not holding someone accountable.
Yeah, you have no context to what's going on.
Yeah. And you know that. We've had the conversation before, is like we love to judge people outside of our church body, but we refuse to hold ourselves accountable within.
Stepping on some toes.
Yeah, I mean, but it's the truth.
I agree with you.
And then when all of a sudden somebody is going to stand up and say, "Okay, we're going to hold you accountable," now all of a sudden it's a big issue.
Or they say, "You're judging me."
Right.
Yeah.
But again, when you have a relationship, and again, I go back to the kids that I have positive relationships with. I mean, we've sat in my office. I couldn't tell you how many times to say it, and I've told them. I said, "Look, you may not like what I'm telling you, but I tell them I would not feel right about myself if I didn't tell you that what you're doing is not right, and that you need to fix it, correct it, change it, or this is the path you're going down."
Yeah.
And I've said that a bunch. And the sad reality is that a lot of the time, and again, I have to tell myself constantly, like, I can't save them. All I can do is invest.
Yeah.
And try to teach and help them to grow, and then let God take care of the rest of it. The sad reality is that more often than not, you know, they don't take the advice, but then at the same time, they've come back and said, "You know what, I should have listened to what you said."
Yeah. Yeah, that would be tough for me. Even I teach about a dozen young adults, and you know, I'm building relationships with them while teaching them the Bible.
Yeah.
You know, and it's difficult walking through and seeing them make mistakes and trying to, you know, help and guide them through it. And then sometimes they listen and sometimes they don't.
Yeah. And we as educators, we have to tell ourselves all the time, like, if we can, if I do this for 30 years, which is we always talk about 30 years, and that's the plan. That's when we're going to retire. And, you know, if I do this for 30 years or more than 30 years, 40 years, whatever the case may be, if we lead one student in the right direction that's going the wrong way, it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it. And that's the reality, and that's the hard truth that we have to come to grips with, is that more often than not, we're going to do everything that we can do to move them in the right direction, and they're not going to go that way.
Yeah.
And we have to be, and I think as Christians, you have to be the same way, is we have to be okay with that. Like, we've done what God has called us to do.
Yeah. I was just about to say, you're talking about your job, but everything you're saying could apply to
Absolutely.
Christianity
Right.
and the Bible and trying to spread the gospel.
Right.
Most people are not going to accept it and go that way.
Right.
The path that leads to heaven is narrow.
But it's not, and I think that's the hard part, is that we want to be in so much control that we want to physically affect how their life goes.
Yeah.
And that's not what God called us to do, because we do not have the capability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
What we do have the tools to do is to invest in them and then let God take care of the rest.
Yeah. He's the one that does the drawing, not us.
Yeah.
And sometimes, me especially, sometimes I just want to grab them by the ears and
Yeah.
be like, do you not understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, get this through your head, but that's not what he
And
called me
I
to.
think we have to meditate on the fact that as long as we're doing what God asks us to do, we have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to lay our head on our pillow at night and let go of the unknown for ourselves, even, and for the people that we're investing in.
Yeah.
And say, you know what? It's okay. It's okay.
It's hard to do.
It is. Sure it is.
It's
Sure it
especially
is.
hard. For me to do.
It's extremely difficult to watch somebody doing the wrong thing. You know they're doing the wrong thing. You've told them they're doing the wrong thing, and they still want to do the wrong thing.
Maybe you've even, like, in my circumstance, I've even lived out the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I had a child out of wedlock and did some things that I knew were wrong and shouldn't have done.
Right.
You know, and then I see some people going down that same path, and you want to, shout to them, "Don't! This path leads to destruction.
Right.
I've been down this road before. Don't go that way."
Right.
It's hard to just give them, spread the seed and
Right.
leave the watering and the growing to God. Sometimes that's a hard thing. Well, we've been at it a while, so one final thing. What do you see in the future for Stephen Hatchell moving forward? You just going to keep chugging along what you're doing?
I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing now, and if God moves me in a different direction, so be it. I think I'm in a much better spot now where, and again, it's not perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect.
Right.
Until I walk into heaven. That's when I'm going to be perfected. Mm-hmm. But the cool thing is that He's continually perfecting me now, taking away stuff that needs to be taken away, giving me tools that I need, and so it's a lot easier for me to see now than it was 10 or 15 years ago when God's moving and why the no is here than it was, but. When He moves, we're going to do our best to follow.
Yeah.
And if that's staying here and retiring, which I would love nothing more than to continue what I'm doing. And again, we talk about retirement. I know I'm still 15, 16 years away, but I can actually retire. I think this would be really cool. I can actually retire the year my son graduates high school. That's just kind of the way it's worked itself out.
Yeah.
So I think that would be really cool for us to walk out the doors together.
Yeah.
But
who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
God may move me. He may do a 180 and say, you're going to do this for the next 15 years of your life or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with that. Because again, He has, I heard this said one time, because I used to get, and I think it's okay to get emotional with God. I really do. A lot of people will think you can't get mad at God. I'm like, they did it all the time in the Old Testament. And then when they did dumb stuff, God got mad at them.
Yeah.
I said, that's a relationship. Like, that's real.
Half of David's Psalms are him being angry at God or
Right.
angry towards someone else.
Right.
God, smite them for me, kill them for me.
And I'm just, I think that's real. Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
raw. But the love is relentless. And I think it's okay to get emotional with God and tell him you're mad at him. And, I've been angry at God for a lot of things, but I do remember when Tyler and I we had a miscarriage. So we struggled to get pregnant. She finally got pregnant. We went to the 10-week, and there was no heartbeat. I was shaking my fist in the backyard at God. I was so mad. And the statement that I made, and I spoke at church, and I mentioned this, the statement that I made is, I've done so much for you. And God's voice came, it was audible. He's like, if I never do anything positive for you ever, my son died on a cross for you, and that's more than enough. And I was like, you're right.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to do anything for me because he's already done enough.
Yeah.
He's already done enough. So, we're just going to go on this journey, and God keeps us here. He keeps us here, which, again, I would love that because I love what I do. I love where I am. I love living in Mayfield. People's like, Mayfield, why? It's just, to me, it's an awesome place. I love it.
Yeah.
It's not perfect.
No
place is.
And the people who look at their small town and they're like, I hate this small town, just go somewhere else. I mean, I've lived all over the world.
Right.
In my military career, I've gotten to see like 13, I think I counted up. I've seen 13 different countries, about 35 of the states. You know, they all have their problems.
Everybody's got problems.
Which one can you deal with and you love? And,
but, I love this community. I love the people here. And again, like, it's not perfect, but it's been great for us.
Yeah.
And if God keeps me here until he calls me home, I'll be perfectly happy with that.
Yeah.
But if he decides, hey, you know what, I need you to go here and I need you to do this, we're going to go do that.
Yeah.
So
that's cool that you've already made up your mind. Hey, I'm willing to go wherever.
Yeah.
Wherever
and I'm just excited about. I look forward to the things that are going to happen. And again, I don't know what they are, but I look, especially in the last 6 months, and he's told me no quite a bit in the last 6 months, but instantly I've been at peace about it, and I know exactly why.
Yeah.
And I don't regret anything in my life, because God His hand has been all over it. Even the mistakes, like, I don't regret those. I learned from those. I don't, but I don't think I could be where I am today without my life moving in the direction that it has. I think if it had taken a turn left or right anywhere, I wouldn't be able to sit here and tell you that. I know why God is telling me no when He does it now, whereas 10 years ago I had to reflect and be nostalgic about it. So it's a pretty cool place to be in, but I also know at the same time I could be here, and then 5 years from now I could be far away from where I am if I'm not obviously careful and watching and minding what I'm doing. Yeah. So,
Stephen, I feel like every now and then I have a guest on where the conversation is good, and I'm just like, I don't want to end it, but we're rolling up on 2.5 hours that we've been talking.
Yeah.
So I feel like you're definitely, if you're up to it, you're one of the guests that I'll probably have you back on in the future. Because we didn't discuss. I mean, there's still a ton of stuff we didn't even discuss. Like, you dropped a bomb on me about having a miscarriage. So we didn't really even get into marriage and some of the stuff that we could have dove off into. I know we kind of focused on the football and that aspect of life, but we could have went 100 different ways. Yeah. We ain't really talked about our church as much and what you do and what we do. Right. So maybe we do this again in the future.
Sure. Sounds good. I've enjoyed it.
A couple months down the road.
I've enjoyed
it.
It's been good.
Thank you so much for coming on. Would you be opposed to praying us out?
No.
All right.
Be fine.
Let's do it.
All right. Father God, we love you. And we just thank you for the opportunity to be able to be open and speak about you. You're the author of it all. You have numbered and counted our steps, and we would not be where we are if it weren't for your grace and your love, and your continual mercy. Because we know all we're going to do on our own is screw it up.
Yes.
And you just bring us back and you put us where you want us to be. We love you, and we just thank you for everything, but especially for your son. That's always been the answer, and it's always been enough. We don't need anything more than Jesus. And we pray. Amen.
Amen. I appreciate it,
Yep.
and we'll hook up again in the future.
All right.
And until next time, stay ready.